Awesome. So, welcome, Marsha Sheldon, and welcome all of you to the Esoteric Nerd interview. And I am the Esoteric Nerd, also known as Dave Lazinski. And I'm so excited this week because I get to talk with someone who's helped me greatly past, but also recently. Somebody who speaks very authentically and seems to draw on a lot of different techniques and strategies, including her heart, when helping people on their life path. So this is Marsha Sheldon, and Marsha, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about what it is you do and what you call yourself, what you do for a living?
Well, I started in the late 70s with an awakening experience that was a phenomenal experience. And it led me on the path of many, many teachers in many, many places. And in the 70s, that was sort of, really off the beaten path. I didn't do the drug scene. I wasn't in all the hallucinations and all that stuff. But a path began to open up for me. And I had wonderful teachers and opportunities. I spent some time with the Native Americans in the old, beautiful Hawaiian culture, got mentored by an old Hawaiian kahuna there. I was involved in one of the first healing arts center in Los Angeles, the Center for Healing Arts. And we had wonderful teachers like Joseph Campbell and all of the people that were involved in healing and the arts and the Symingtons and working with alternative healing and meditation, Ram Dass, Joseph Campbell, Robert Bly, just that cutting edge of people that were awakening in that time. And so I was really fortunate to be present with that. And I began to teach dream work there and healing work. I was involved in community service and put on programs through them. I also got involved with a body of work called Voice Dialogue. Hal Stone had started the Center for Healing Arts and he was a Jungian analyst and went off to do some other work called Voice Dialogue work, and I was on staff with them. I did a lot of work and was on staff with another great teacher who was Brewjoy, was doing a lot of work with him, and collecting different modalities for my own healing, and it just became this full spectrum, graduate school and woo-woo, I would say. And because my path was on the fringe, I didn't do ordinary education and, the whole academic thing. And I would jokingly say that my card should read Marsha Sheldon, Funny Lady Who. And anytime I got a referral, it would say, oh, well, I know this funny lady who. And so it was sort of on the fringe, and a wealth of incredible experiences and openings and way to work with myself and ways to work with other people. So it's been 35 years and many, many cycles of extraordinary experiences. One of my passions is teaching, but I love working with couples. I have a whole body of work called The Art and Work of Relationship. And because we don't get that teaching in our families or in our schools, it's such a needed resource that in California you can get lots and lots of ways of learning and working in relationship.
Yeah, it's starting to get a little bit better out there, but you're right. I, as well as just did that Awakening Our Children workshop, and people are beginning to be more hungry than ever for the information. That's nice to see, especially I'd imagine someone like yourself who's been doing this for a while. It's nice to see things beginning to open up more than before.
Well, I joke, my whole life path is relationship. I was a twin. I wasn't even, single in the womb. And I've been in a relationship for 45 years. And
I should spend more time with you. I need some help.
I tell you, it is the greatest joy and the greatest teacher and sometimes the largest challenges, because relationships will require you to grow. And if you ever want a great, exploration about yourself, relationship will bring the very best of you to the forefront. And it will also show you all of your defenses and all your flaws. And it will be a tremendous portrait of learning.
So that's wonderful. And you know what? I'm making a note of that. We're going to come back to relationships because I can tell that you have a lot to say about that I'd love people to hear, because as we know, relationship is, like you said, it's pretty big in everyone's life. So, but before we do that, you brought up a word earlier, awakening. And this is a word that's becoming more and more popular now, at least down here in the San Diego area. And so I'm going to ask you if you feel comfortable telling me a little bit more in detail about what your awakening experience was, or other experiences that you've had that have been similar since.
I've been very
And also, though, I'm going to interrupt you. Also, though, if you have a moment, what does awakening mean to you as well?
It means really going out of ordinary awareness and surface attention in tapping into some of the extraordinary levels of consciousness that bring in energies and experience and wisdom. And there are so many resources on so many levels that we have access to with just that kind of opening. And again, mine wasn't through the path of drugs or altered states like that. I was a very imploded person. I had a twin sister who was a genius. They thought I was retarded because I had severe visual problems. So the early part of my life was really dormant and imploded. And when I was 27, I was at a rock concert with my husband, my now husband. I wasn't married then. And my husband was smoking nonstop. And he met a friend there, said, come learn to meditate and you'll quit smoking. Well, I didn't know what that was. I thought it was sort of weird. I was aware of Maharishi and, the TM thing, and I thought they were so weird. But anyway, I came back. Here's this very imploded, dormant being sitting down in meditation, and here's my hands collapse, and all I could do was say, if I'm really good and if I'm really quiet, Larry will quit smoking. Mm-hmm. That's how repressed I was. And after a little while, I noticed my body was moving back and forth, and that scared me. And so Paul was teaching the meditation, so I thought, well, I'll just send it back to him, and pretty soon I'm in a full-fledged,
Wow.
No idea what a Kriya is. Long story short, that was an event, an energetic event. And after that, instead of describing the whole event, I had 2 years of every kind of phenomena, seeing things, hearing things, vision. I would scan my hand over the body and it would stop at the acupuncture points. There was an energetic sensitivity. I could scan over the body and my hand would stop where there was an illness or kind of constriction. And this was just tapping into a level of knowing. It wasn't anything that I learned. So it was just one of the phenomena that came through. And through those experiences, they connected me to other experiences, whether it was going to Hawaii and being chosen by an elder. And she would take me through the islands, and if she was with me and a phenomena happened to her, that meant that the ancestors had approved me, what they call is showing the bones of the ancestors, which means you can tell this white person one of the secrets. And so we would go along the day and she would show me to another place and tell me another story, and we would go and another phenomena would happen, which is another level of permission. And over time, it gave me access to the levels of consciousness and the realities of the Hawaiians. Wow. And I would go to the wet caves, say in, the north coast of Kauai, and I'd go in the wet cave, and I always have this impression that there's this gigantic lizard in there. And, I don't know if I'm crazy, but eventually I met a wonderful teacher in Hawaii, a man named Alan Alapai, and he would do body work, beautiful body work. And I could always check out my hallucinations with him. And I'd say, Alan, every time I go into that wet cage, I think there's a gigantic lizard in there. And he'd say, oh, that's Mo'o. And then he'd tell me the legend of Mo'o.
Oh, wow.
So I have a lot of razzle-dazzle experiences that I was gifted with, I think, to remind people what we have as far as accessibility. And that can be in healing, it can be in psychic areas, it can be in knowing, it's all of those levels. Dream work is another level where phenomenal experiences come through. So awakening is, I think, really having access to the energies and the wisdoms, whether it's in the unconscious through dream works or through the transcendent states of higher energies.
Nice, very beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Well, I don't want to jump back to relationships quite yet, so I want to go on to something else. You also mentioned earlier that one of your biggest teachers has been yourself. So, as you've been having these experiences for the many years and as you've been learning different things, You also mentioned, a lot of the stuff you were either practicing on yourself or you were learning through your own experiences. What has that been like for you to be somebody who's been helping people for a long time, but you're also helping yourself, and you're also looking at things from your point of view in your own life? What's that like for you?
It's like being, the God's guinea pig, that they'll run me through it, and I will have the blessings and the experiences. And then when you're a teacher, you induct people into those experiences. So it's been this extraordinary, I've been witness to an extraordinary life. And to be able to pass on the beauty that comes with that, or to induct people into the access of it. And not for them to duplicate what my experiences are, but to really find their own path and their own rhythm to access what is naturally theirs is one of the greatest gifts.
Beautiful. So what is it like for you, or how do you, what are the steps that you take when you do hit that, that low point, what I'll call a pre-peak? And you don't have to share with me what one of those examples might be in regards to a low point, but how, at this point in your life, when a challenge or a bump in the road does come in, what is it like for you? And how quickly can you flow the energy back towards positive? Or what are the steps you take to get through that?
It's interesting, now that I'm older, I respect depression. I respect times where I need to hold still. And it can be illness that brings it in, or that low-grade depression where you feel like you're walking through tar. And it means to me to curl in. It means to go inside and not try to find the answer outside. And it would be an example, if I'm depressed, then I'll lie on the couch, put lots of blankets on me, close the windows, and sink down to the bottom of the depression. And there's a replenishment that comes that springs you back up. And then when the energy shifts, then I'll really use meditation to hear what's going on. I will open to, I will open to words of encouragement or instructions. And I'm fine if no information comes. But more often than not, these little wisps of simple sentences that are so easy to disregard come through, and you follow that thread to another. So I would say to be able to witness, to be able to have learning techniques where you absolutely stop the mind and you find these places of stillness. It isn't nothingness. You get quiet enough to have this little tiny vibration. And all of this stops. And then something comes in. And you can feel when truth comes in. You can feel when it's a mental energy and it's more blah, blah, blah. And it might be talking in an authority voice. But it's
softer.
And you follow that thread. But you can't feel that come in unless you're still.
Yeah.
And you move towards silence.
Is that something that you teach people to do? So one of the many things or reasons why someone could contact you would be to actually discuss with you what you just talked about, which is about finding a way to become still when needed, to quiet the mind, and to notice the difference between the heavier mind and emotions talking to me to the softer, more supportive, deeper information that we can receive.
There are thousands of kinds of meditation, and they will take you many different places. But to me, there's mindfulness and the stillness of the mind and clarity, and then that universe of what the heart is. But to me, the pay dirt is the silence. Because with the silence, you can feel still enough to let those really subtle levels to come in to have access to that. And that can be dream work, intuition, reading people, all different kinds of knowing, healing. I mean, that's really the full spectrum of all of that.
Nice. Well, good. My next question is, and then what we're going to do is we're going to pause the recording and then start another one up. So we'll finish part one with how challenging was it for you beginning this career in the 70s when, as you mentioned, you had a lot of people going about this in a very, very different way with the drugs and other. And in fact, many people who would call themselves spiritual and were spiritual seekers, but they were going about this in a very different way. Did you ever feel pressured? Were you ever in uncomfortable positions? Did you ever almost, hey, I'm going to try the drugs because it seems like that's what everyone's doing?
I mean, it wasn't my deal. I mean, the first time I smoked pot, I broke out in hives.
Mm-hmm.
You know, God stepped out and looked around and said, I don't think so, Cookie. Keep a lid on it. You know, you're going to be hallucinating in about 4 years. So it was really my path. You know, I had a sister who was, you know, she was doing all this sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and she was a star shooter. I mean, she was...
Yeah, I'd like to meet your sister now.
And her name is Marvel, and she is.
Interesting.
So that was her path. But for me, it was when the phenomena hit, I think it was a great gift that I had a good amount of self-loathing, so I didn't inflate around it, okay? And then another thing that happened was I knew how crippled I was. I knew how messed up I was. So the first thing that I did was to get into really some therapy to start to heal the wounds of self-loathing and criticism and all this natural implosion that took place. So that gave me really, really good grounding because I was humbled and present. And there were lots of invitations. I was invited in those days. All the gurus thought if you had phenomena that you were enlightened, you know, old soul stuff, which is a little corny, but that gave me access to the TM groups and different meditation groups to come in and teach their teachers and have the experience of all these wonderful gurus without being chela or student to them. So I got to come in at a higher level to teach, and then I got to see all the shadows of the gurus and their misuse of power, and all the people that were kissing up and wanted to be on the right hand of power or God in their own distortions wouldn't call the gurus out on why are you sleeping with people, why are you beating people up, why are you stealing their money. So I got another graduate degree in, you know, misuse of power, I would say. It was extraordinary experiences.
I got to be honest with you. One of the biggest surprises I've had in the last 2.5 years of focusing more work on adults is the amount of women, and I would say, a good handful who have come in, and one of the first things we talk about is how some type of guru or spiritual being had abused them in the past. And that was one of their biggest issues. It blew my mind. And it wasn't because I didn't hear or understand how it was possible, what you're saying, how, these guru type people were, not so perfect, but it was the amount. It blows me away and how much that's happened.
I too was shocked to see that as being the norm.
Yeah.
I would say that it's really sad and things have changed as far as people's awareness. And I would say that a lot of these gurus had great gifts and no psychological development. They were catapulted. Like I said, I had enough of self-loathing to keep me grounded and not inflated. That was their ticket. And so they never worked on themselves. So all of their inadequacies or all their misuse of powers was from this sort of dented personality. And they had access to energies. And what I'd like to say now is those people had extraordinary teaching. It wasn't them. There was one particularly that he would do satsang, and I would bring out a pad of paper and he would be teaching, and literally you could feel the energy enter the room. He could be doing a dog food commercial. I would be just writing down information that was coming from another stream because he opened up access. So it's not just saying if the person's contaminated or undeveloped that their teaching's wrong. That's not true. It's brilliant. But you have to know that these people get elevated and they get bit in the ass by their shadow, as do the little chelas who are devotional. And their power drives to want to get close to the guru is, what allowed them to be abused by these people. It's their shadow. I want to be but next to power. And the power's shadow is I don't know how to do relationships, or, I want what I want and I'm sort of flawed.
Well, I want what I want.
Well, you being conscious is a challenge because you know what the balloon payments are.
True. Well, thank you. What